Welcome to another episode of the BreakDown podcast with me, Tony DADA, your soul brother, and young Natty. And we have put these BreakDown podcasts together to literally do that, break down some of the blogs that I've written over. Well, I write every month, don't I?
Yeah.
And it was his idea that we break them down because you felt that there was more gems to be unpicked in what I'd written than what was actually conveyed, right?
Yeah, because I felt like that people could get a better understanding of some of the gems that you were writing from a different perspective, or from my perspective.
Yeah, and it seems like it's gone down really well. Some of you have really found them interesting and useful and beneficial, and we know that based on the feedback we're getting, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So, today.
This blog is based on the tips on how you can build mental resilience as an entrepreneur or through your entrepreneurial process. And you wrote some tips down in this blog on how someone who's a social entrepreneur or creative can apply to themselves along their journey.
Yeah, and in the blog I wrote about some of the experiences that I had coming up.
Yeah. And
I guess that's what really kind of intrigued you as to how was I able to, despite having certain adversities, being homeless and being on the road or being in a gang, still have the capacity to have a conviction and a vision and be resilient to make things happen.
Yeah, and the first tip you gave was have a can-do attitude and not can't-do attitude. And the story in the blog that really showed that can-do attitude was when you said the capital that you had was low, but the dream that you had was you're still funding that dream that you had of creating a voice for artists.
Yeah, and I think in that stage and phase of my life, it was really about putting to the test some of the things, if not all of the things that I'd learned from my mentor.
Yeah.
And so that kind of really stresses the importance of having a mentor that can feed into your life from a positive point of view.
Yeah.
And so I remember around that time, you just only have to pay attention to people and you notice how people are generally so negative in terms of you can't do this. I remember, at the time I was running my not-for-profit organization as well as raising 2 children as a single parent.
Yeah.
And people were like, you can't do this, you can't do that, it's not possible, it's not doable. And I'm like, well, just because you haven't seen it before, how do you draw that conclusion? So for me, it was about, rather than focusing on what I can't do, why don't I focus on what I can do?
That makes sense.
And not only focus on what I can do in terms of in my mind, but focus my energy, my words, you won't catch me speaking about I can't do it. It's just outside of my vocabulary. I just don't know how to say that.
Yeah, and that actually blends in quite well into point 2 where you say stay away from people with a poverty mindset.
Absolutely.
You said stay the hell away.
Yeah, because for me, it's like a stink. Like, they stink. You just don't want to be around them. It's a bad odor. Get the hell away. Stay away from such people. Because if you don't, and I'm kind of being serious here, that stench will rub off on you eventually if they stick around long enough.
Do you mean that their thoughts or some of their negative thoughts could enter your psyche?
Like an onion. What happens if you have an onion close to you for long enough? You go out and people can tell that you've been next to onions, right?
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
They can't see the onion, but they know you've been close to onion. Same thing. That whole psyche, that whole aura, that whole energy can rub off on you.
Okay. So that leads into point 3. You said use your creative mind to begin problem solving. So when you're trying to start you're a not-for-profit organization, I'm sure you had to use your creative mind to solve some issues.
Oh yeah.
What were some of those issues that you may have had to solve?
Well, one of the first issues that I had, which was my biggest issue, which I didn't realize at the time, has actually turned out to be the biggest blessing, was I had no money. I had no money, but I wanted this thing to happen. So I remember the first deal I cut, and this way of doing business has stayed with me all my life and enabled me to do, really big deals with big organizations. And that was, I looked at who I wanted to engage with and found out what they needed. So my first thing was I wanted to stage an event. I had no money. I couldn't hire the venue. I had no musicians. I couldn't pay for them. And I had no budget to do marketing. So what did I do? I found a young kid who was an artist on the street and said to him, listen, if you draw, because it was that bad, if you draw my leaflet, this is what I want, this is what I want to say, and gave him all the information. When I have my event, you can come in for free and I'll buy you drinks, as opposed to paying £100. He was like, cool. Then I went to the venue and said, listen, on a Sunday you have no people coming in here, so give me the venue for free and I'll guarantee you that you're going to have 50 people in the venue and they're going to be spending money at your bar. You're going to make money. He's like, cool. Then I went to the musicians and said, guys, listen, I got this venue and we can play in this venue. Like, you want to rehearse your drumming, right? You want to rehearse your guitaring, playing skills. I got a venue. You can have it for free and promote yourself and you can get gigs. They're like, cool, all right, so you're part of my band now. All right, so this is it. And then I went to singers and said, listen, singers, I've got a band, I've got a venue, live music, you can sing on stage in front of an audience. They were like, yeah, cool. That was it. We did the first gig and that was it. Within 6 weeks, that venue was so jammed, we had to move from that venue to another venue. And of course, by that time now, I've got collateral because I could say to this new guy with this new venue, listen, we're down the road and we're filled to capacity. How about we come? He's like, what, you're bringing business to me? Here's the venue. And that's how it went. And from that, I went on to do deals with, all sorts of companies, Yamaha, as well as Yamaha, we had organizations like record companies like Island Records, the British Army, the Home Office. It was just basically based on the same principle. And fundamentally, for me, that was a game changer because most people try and get cash money.
Right.
Do you understand? But it's not about cash money. It's about understanding what's the value that you're bringing and what's the value that they're bringing. If they recognize that you're bringing £100 of value and they're giving you £100 of value, do we actually need to do the transaction?
No.
There you go.
That makes sense. So you actually created value through filling the need,
yeah,
and solving a problem at the same time.
At the same time, I didn't realize it, but it was like, this works, man. And I mean, it worked. That initial situation then actually built up to become a nationwide program that we ran in Birmingham, Manchester, Nottingham, and Leeds. Like, pretty cool. So it just shows what's possible.
Do you want to say the year for the people who don't know the year?
What, when we started?
Yeah.
What, the very first?
Yeah.
Well, the very first event, I think it was the 1st of March, 1992. Oh, right. Okay. So just let people know. Yeah, we've been doing this a minute.
I was born in 96, by the way.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a little while, and it was just great to see because there was no one showing us how to develop that entrepreneurial spirit back then, especially like if you're coming from where we come from, our parents, for the most part, they were workers. So this was just like brand new territory, trying to go out there and do your own thing. And of course, my parents weren't really able to guide me in that way. So it was solo. But I'm glad I did it because I now see that I was just kind of ahead of the time, really.
Yeah. So the fourth point, which is really different from the first three, you said create and cultivate your belief system. What do you mean by your belief system?
So, there's a difference between believing and knowing. Yeah. And I cultivate, for me, it's like, it's really good if you know something, you know what you can and what you can't do. But creating a belief system is a collection of thoughts and ideas based on possibilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you create a belief system, it's almost like an armor that you put on, in terms of you believe that you can do this. You believe it with all of your heart and soul. Are you with me? Yeah. And for many people, they might want to start to do something, but deep in their soul, they don't believe that they can.
Right.
Do you see my point? And so when I talk about creating and building a belief system, it's about being very clear about what you're going to accept from other people in terms of their beliefs. So people always share with you what they believe is possible and is not possible. But if you have your own belief system, then you will actually almost have a filtering system in place, that when someone presents something to you, you kind of look at it and say, do I want to accept it into my world, my belief system, or do I want to drop it? So I used to say to my children when I was raising them as a single parent, I'd always share stuff with them, and I would be like, you could either accept it and bring it into your belief system or put it in the bin. It makes no difference to me, Yeah. So it's really important that we don't just accept things, that we are regularly reflecting on what is it you believe, why do you believe it, and how did you come to adopt that belief.
Okay. So would you say the strength of your belief system can be relational to, because before you said there are things that you know you can and can't do. So through the things that you've known over time that you can do, does that add to your belief system? Because when you...
Yeah. So obviously the things that you know that you can do, that gives you a grounding to a certain degree. But we all want to expand and become more. So that's where the belief system comes into play. Like, okay, if you're an athlete and you can run, a certain 400 meters at a certain time, is it part of your belief system that you can run a faster time?
Right.
Yeah. Well, you have to believe it, mind, body, and soul. So physically, you put yourself through the training because you believe it. Mentally, you can also support that by having creative visualization, in terms of seeing yourself running and seeing a clock and achieving that time. Because you can put the work in physically, but not believe it.
Right.
Do you see my point? Yeah. And that's where it's important to have the right kind of people around you, so that vibrationally everyone's on the same tone in terms of possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of led into point 5, which is do visualization exercises.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, this is something that my spiritual mentor had introduced to me, and it kind of made sense to me back then. Today, it's much more widely known and practiced. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's scientific research that demonstrates that this stuff kind of works, in terms of having a time that's set aside at the beginning of every day and at the close of every day, where you just visualize that which you want to experience. Because the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what your eyes see and what your mind's eye sees.
Right.
Yeah. And so particularly when you're going to bed, having that time where you create that vision and allow it to now sort of play in your subconscious mind, I found it just kept me focused.
Is your visualization process the same every day? For example, like, do you look at that the same thing, or do you look at aspects of the overall vision?
That's a deep question. Now, the question is, how deep do we want to go for our people? I mean, so we could actually break that down into segments. So the first part of the visualization process is one, actually reviewing the day that I've just had. So at night time, before I go to sleep, review the day that I've just had and look at, in particular, the things that didn't quite go the way I would have liked them to go.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in that scenario, I visualize how I would have liked the situation to have gone.
Okay.
And the reason why is so that I don't carry negative thoughts or feelings into
The next day.
the next day. You know. And then it's about visualizing the day that I want to step into.
Right.
Yeah, so that I'm setting the intention in terms of this is the day that I want to have. So think about, you know, if you've got meetings, if you're on a date, all that kind of stuff, you set the intention by visualizing how you would like it to go. So that when you wake up the next day, you're walking into your day that you've already set the intention for the night previous.
That makes so much sense. Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So now, you know when someone says, oh, I had a bad day.
Yeah.
That means like the day was bad on you.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But when you set your intention that this is how I want my day to be, well, it's like the wind, when you go out of your front door, the wind blows, but you don't pay attention to that.
No.
You're paying attention to where you're going.
Yeah.
Same way, if you set your intention and you know that this meeting is really important to you, if it's that important to you, are you going to let someone who cut you up as you was driving stop you and take your attention and you get into some beef with that person when you know like you got $100,000 deal meeting to attend? Where are you going to put your focus? On what you intended.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the significance of it. It just helps you to recognize what's important, and it serves as a compass for you.
Okay. And that leads into the next point. You said create a possibility thinking place in your mind.
So, you know, I think we're only just beginning to recognize that the mind is so powerful. I mean, I've been blessed in the sense that I've been able to have access and tap into through my spiritual mentor, who this guy is just, you know, he just is years ahead of his time. You know, 40 years ago he was doing, you know, things like yoga and stuff like that in our community. Yeah. And when we talk about a positive mindset, or not so much positive, but what was it? Possibility. Yeah. And that is, first of all, recognizing and having as part of your belief system that your mind is like a garden. It's soil. Yeah. And if you have fertile soil, then you can grow things. Yeah. And so the whole idea of possibility thinking is setting your mind to grow in a certain way. So when you're faced with a challenge, rather than asking yourself, and you know, it's all about the self-talk, like what do you say to yourself? When something negative happens, you say, oh, why did this happen to me? What have I done to deserve this? That kind of talk that we can all relate to. Well, rather than doing that, which isn't really positive.
Disempowering thoughts.
It's disempowering, right? The practice to get into is what possibilities could come out of this situation.
Right.
That's the practice. And it is a practice because, you know, it takes practice to cultivate that. But that's the start. It's about looking at and seeking and searching for possibilities. Like, that ain't easy.
Is that why you started teaching me chess?
Well, I mean, chess is a great tool to help you begin to develop your mind. I mean, I advocate that everyone should play chess, as you know. I did an experiment, there you go, possibility thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the possibilities that I might be able to teach my son how to play chess? Now, of course, I shared the thought with some people and they're like, are you crazy? You can't do that. And I'm like, why not? Let me give it a go. And I tried because I had the possibility in my mind. And lo and behold, I couldn't believe it. Within a couple of months, this guy's playing chess. But the crazy thing is, he was only 3. Because I saw that where my son is concerned, then yeah, any young cat that I care about, I'm gonna teach them how to play chess, because I know that what that game does, and so many people don't recognize what it does, is it makes you think about possibilities. I think the number one thing that why I personally think every young black male, it's a must, should learn how to play chess. There was 2 things I taught my son before he was 6. Well, chess at the age of 3 and financial literacy, how to make money at the age of 5. Those 2 things, you need to have those things under your belt. Where chess is concerned, why that's so important is because, and now we're kind of going off camera, so this might have to be into 2 parts, but it's like, what chess does is it makes you think about possibilities without actually having to have the experience. Case in point, I remember there was a time when my son came home one day, he must have been about 11, 12, came rushing through the door, Dad, I've done it. I won a game of chess. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I beat a policeman in chess. I'm like, what are you talking about? He was like, Dad, I was coming home and this police officer, he came up and he started frisking me. And I could see what he was trying to do. He was trying to get me to get angry so that I could react, so that he could arrest me. But I played a move on him. I just made sure that I was calm and I gave him no reason to make that move. So he saw it all as a chess game. Now, if he wasn't a chess player, he might have just fallen into the trap, got arrested. It was through no fault of his own because the guy played him, and now he's starting to harbor feelings of resentment. Do you see my point? Yeah. And I watched, when he said that to me, when he went to his room, I was like, wow. Right there, I've just got my reward for teaching him how to play chess. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is why I encourage every parent, if you have young children, particularly if you come from our community, then you can set them up big time. I mean, until they start beating you in the game. It took him 20 years or so, but you know, but it's all good because he's been able to use that to his advantage in so many ways.
Yeah, it actually comes to a point where when I make mistakes now, I don't see them as mistakes. I call them blunders. Because you know, in chess, when you make a wrong move, but you could have made a better move.
Right.
It's a blunder, but you still have an opportunity for a better outcome.
Yeah, and the other thing about chess that people don't realize, don't it pull on your emotions?
Yeah.
Like you really feel the emotion of that move. It's just a powerful game. I know we've kind of gone off topic, but it really just demonstrates how important the mind is, because, you know, they say where the mind goes, the body follows. So the question is, where is your mind? And it comes back to that whole resilience, because if your mind is focused on where you're going, not where you're at, it's just a game changer.
Yeah. So on to point 7, back on track. You said focus on your mind, not your circumstance.
That's what I just said right there. I'm ahead of you. And that's what it's about. Focusing on your vision. Where are you going? You might be living on a council estate and you know, family's got no money. But it don't matter. There's still an opportunity there. If you employ all the things that we just talked about, possibility thinking, right there on the council estate, where there's not a lot of money being made, whatever the circumstance, there's a possibility. And you know, that reminds me of a friend of mine, what's his name? Alex Amosu. Did I ever tell you that story?
I don't think so.
This was a young guy who he created, certainly in my community, the first ringtone. It was called R&B ringtones.
Really?
Yeah, back in the day, like way back in the day. And how the story goes is, his family was living on a council estate. He's from a council estate. Yeah, I mean, I ain't talking his business, but it's a good story. And from Nigerian parentage, and he goes to uni. And after the first year of his uni, he comes back, summer holidays. But somehow he's learned how to do ringtones. So he's come home, and his younger brother's, at home, and he's given his younger brother a ringtone. He put it on his phone. His brother goes to school the next day, comes back home, and comes back with a friend. Says, my friend would like a ringtone. Can you do it for him? It's like, okay, no worries. Done it. Went back to school, came back the next day. Now he's got 5 friends. My friend's Nigerian. He's like, okay, I'm going to do it for you guys, but you're going to have to give me £1 each, right? They give him £1 each. Happy days, he's got a £5. Go back to school, come back, 30 man come with him to the house. That's how his business started, from the council estate. Within his first year, he never went back to uni, by the way. Yeah. By the end of his first year, meal. So, possibilities.
Yeah.
Do you see my point?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can look him up. He's a big boy now, doing all kinds of stuff. Alex Omosu. Big up, Alex Omosu, if you come across the video. Look, I'm promoting you. And it just goes to show, and I'm sharing it because it shows what can happen if you believe. And especially now in this season where we're talking about the new age of entrepreneurship. Like, if you understand what this season is, this is the best time to be alive. Don't be listening to what the media and the news be telling everybody about austerity and economic doom and gloom. There's always something going on. There's always been something, and will always be something going on. The point is, where will be your focus? Is it going to be on your mind, or is it going to be on externals?
Right. And that leads perfectly into point 8, where you say never stop working on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mind, body, and soul.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's really what it's all about. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, and we've been advocating and promoting that for the last 9 years, as you know. Well, the time that we're moving into, or that we've moved into, kind of like everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. Like, you need to have multiple streams of income going on. But as an entrepreneur is someone who just is able to seize opportunities. If you look at the derivative of the word entrepreneur, it means to take a hold, to grab a hold. Well, who's doing the taking hold and the grabbing hold of? It's you. Who are you? Mentally, do you have the right kind of mindset? Are you looking after your body, that physically you have the strength and the capacity? Do you have the resources? Is the quality of your heart, such that you're not just trying to just take, but you're also a giver? These are the things that you have to be working on a regular basis, because as Errol, my business mentor, said, and he ran 47 companies, made lots of money, and he said, Tony, listen, when you make a lot of money, it just amplifies who you really are. Who are you? And that's really what it all comes down to. So if you forget who you are and go chasing the money or chasing the building of a business or companies, then you lose yourself in the pursuit. And what's the point of that?
There's no point in that.
Absolutely none. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this was an extended version, right? I hope you guys found it useful or find it useful, but it was good though.
Yeah.
So, what was your main takeaway from today in terms of what we've shared?
My main takeaway was point 8, was to never stop working on yourself. Because remember, it's this thing that I've been saying for the past probably 2 weeks that you've always said to me. Everything looks the same, but nothing is the same.
Yeah.
Because when you go through this process, and obviously through the process there's progress. So when you acknowledging the progress, you're like, okay, let me go harder. But before you go harder, you have to take time to assess.
Yeah, and that's a game changer, because we don't do that. It took me decades before I actually learned that lesson, that you always, I mean, when you look at sports, they say time out, right? The timeout is your opportunity to reassess, reevaluate. How are we doing? What are the wins? What areas can I work on? You know.
Yeah. So that was the the biggest takeaway from this blog, because it wasn't that long ago. I think it was last week when I said, "Yeah, Uncle, this thing's kind of bugging me, and I can't really, get it out of my brain." And then we solved it, and I thought that was the answer. And then I was like, nah, something's still bugging me. So I had to go back, and I took 2 days out, and I reassessed all my pillars: my mental, emotional, physical, financial, and my relationships. And so you have to reassess your pillars.
Yeah.
I think it should be, for me, I do them quarterly. I should probably do them more than that, but it's up to you.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
But that's because you just got started. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still in a good position, because some people don't even know what the hell you're talking about in terms of looking at these different 5 areas of your life on a regular basis. Are you kidding me? Some people don't even look at it at all.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why we're doing these, to kind of introduce you to a system, a formula that will at least give you the strongest chance to be able to navigate towards your vision of success, as opposed to just, a ship adrift, just floating.
Yeah, because if you don't know where you are in all those aspects along the journey, you can just get lost.
Well, for sure, because if you don't know where you are, how can you know where you're going? Like any sat nav, in order for you to plot how you can get to the destination that you want to get to, what's the first thing you have to do? Identify where you are at.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, you can't go nowhere.
Yeah.
And even though we do this every day, for those of us who have cars and stuff like that, we do it all the time, but we don't apply that same approach to our own lives. So there lies the challenge.
Yeah.
So I think it's been good.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. It's been good.
Let us know what you think. Do you think it's been good? Has it been useful? Has it been beneficial? Because we are only going to do more of these if you let us know that it is beneficial. For me, it's about creating a new definition of what success means, because the things that we are sharing, what success really means to you and how you can cultivate it, is not taught in any school, college, or university that I know of.
No, not that I've seen either.
So we need to bring it, we need to do it for ourselves. On that note, we're done.
Yep.
It's thank you, and I'll see you next time. From me, Tony Dada, your soul brother, and also the young man Natty.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Till next time. Enough love.